What might be our first major casualty of the corona pandemic? Stanford University is cutting 11 of their 36 Division I programs due to lack of funding and shutdown from the coronavirus. I'm going to get into the letter from Stanford as well as some other things about the finances and breakdown of the athletics. But first, if you could, like the video, share it on social media, and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to make sure you get notifications every day on these daily videos. Let's dig into this first. An open letter for Stanford community and the Stanford athletics family. One of Stanford's great sources of pride is our intercollegiate athletics program. Over the course of our storied history, through innumerable days of challenge, triumph, joy, our student athletes. All right, let's scroll through this. So they talk about how they provide 36 varsity sports, which is more than most universities across the country. Basically, they're cutting 11 sports. The 11 sports are here. They're cutting men's and women's fencing, field hockey, lightweight rowing, men's rowing, co-ed and women's sailing, squash, men's volleyball, wrestling, and synchronized swimming. So that's 11 programs, 240 athletes, and 22 coaches are losing their jobs because of this. They go in breaking down why they do this. They talk about the financial stability of these sports. Most Division I programs have 18 varsity sports when they have 36. They've been losing money since, what did it say? They've been losing money since before the pandemic, and by 2021, they were expected to have a deficit of $12 million per year, and then $25 million by the best case scenario. And now, because of COVID-19 and all these shutdowns, they're looking at a $70 million loss over these past 3 seasons. They investigated why they should cut these sports, and here's their breakdown. They talk about sponsorships at the Division I level, the national youth and postgraduate participation in sports, local and national fan interests, potential expense savings from the elimination of the sport, incremental investments required to keep or put sports in position to achieve competitive excellence on the national level, history of the sport at Stanford, prospects for future success of the sports at Stanford, impact on gender equality and Title IX implications, impact on the diversity of our student-athlete population, impact on the student-athlete experience across all sports now and in the future. This really sucks. I mean, if we look at, it's hard to find because Stanford's a private school, but if we can look at some of the finances, I tried to dig into the Pac-12 on how much the revenue is. These numbers are from 2017, 2018, the latest I could find. So we're looking at total revenue here, and UCLA is the highest in the Pac-12 at $130 million, Washington, $130 Arizona State and Oregon, 120, 113. Here's a large chunk of the Pac-12 schools are down here: Utah, California, Colorado, and then Oregon State. And we're right around the 90, where are they? Right here. They're like $90 million range. So we can assume Stanford is probably somewhere in this range. It just sucks that these programs make so much money, especially a university like Stanford. How much is David Shaw making? David Shaw's got a nice fat contract. I know that. I understand football and basketball are the moneymakers, but sports is a big deal for these kids, especially competing at the Division I level. And the NCAA, like I've already talked about, is a bunch of hypocrites that make a shit ton of money anyway and pay a bunch of, bureaucrats to deal with red tape and stuff and not really go towards the student athletes. Why? I understand we're paying for education and stuff like that with these athletes, but most of these athletes don't have scholarships. They're just playing the sports. They're going to school on their own dime. I mean, the universities and the NCAA can put these sporting events on and competitions on for these athletes to compete at the next level. I mean, sports just gives such a great impact on student athletes. It's really frustrating to see this. I mean, 11 out of 36 sports cut, and people say, well, most universities only hold 18 and stuff like that. But you're not most universities. You're Stanford University. You're a higher beacon of learning and excellence. Stanford's a fantastic university from an educational standpoint and an athletic competitive standpoint as well. So I just think they should, the NCAA needs to do something to keep these programs afoot. I know more programs are at risk of getting cut, and that's a shame too, but that's a big chunk of Stanford's programs. I know football, basketball are your only money makers for college athletics, but the amount of money that's sunk into those programs and sunk into NCAA bullshit with bureaucrats paid for by all these universities and just constant boards of directors and all this nonsense, athletic directors. I mean, look at Stanford's endowment, $27.7 billion. You can't find some money there to put these sports on? How much does it cost to put these sports on? it can't be that expensive. They say they're losing $12 million, but are you really losing $12 million, Stanford? Or is that you're writing off on the books for what you're paying certain people? I understand some scale backs, but can't the universities, the NCAA, the governing bodies, the conferences get these sports put together and kept on? If there's a national competition for these sports where multiple universities within the conference or within the country are competing at these, sports. Let's just pull back at these sports. Men's and women's fencing, that's an Olympic sport. Field hockey, an Olympic sport. Lightweight rowing, an Olympic sport. Men's rowing, an Olympic sport. Co-ed and women's sailing, I believe that's an Olympic sport. I don't know about squash, men's volleyball, wrestling, synchronized swimming, all Olympic sports. Why can't we find the money for these athletes to compete and get better? These are Olympic sports. We all watch the Olympics. The Olympics make a god ton of money for these sponsors and stuff like that. I just don't see why we can't sponsor the athletes playing in these events. It's not that big of a deal. They take a little bit of a price cut. You lose some money on the sports, but it's for the greater good, and it attracts people. You think about the money you make for people paying tuition to go to your university if you're not paying them scholarship. Oh, it's so frustrating. I can only imagine how these athletes feel. 240 of them, they're done after this year. The people losing their jobs, I feel terrible for. All the alumni, it just really sucks. And I hate to see this from such a great university like Stanford. Who's next? It's hard. It's really heartbreaking just knowing that we aren't doing everything we can for student athletes to compete out there in the field of sports, which I totally believe we should be doing. I don't know. Hopefully people get their head out of their ass and they can get these sports back and we can keep these things going. I don't believe necessarily all these finances, since Stanford's a private school, they kind of keep that stuff hidden so they can say what they want. I don't know if I believe it, but we need some adults in the room to get this set up. But I think that's going to do it for us today. If you enjoy the content, remember to like and share and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you all tomorrow.